doing fantastic. We have another great episode today of the Prospect Podcast. I'm Coach Schumann. I'm here with Coach DePascal as always, and we have a fantastic guest today, Max Browne, who is a former five-star football player coming out of high school, Elite 11 player, went to USC, was a quarterback there. I think finished that over at Pittsburgh. Has a really, really interesting journey and has a phenomenal take on the recruiting process for himself, what he experienced, playing at the highest level, because he was a top tier recruit and, had a lot of success, dealt with some failures along the way, and how he kind of managed those from his own standpoint. He has a very successful podcast. He really talks a lot about recruiting, a lot of things with respect to that. And obviously, as well, is a broadcaster covering college football. So it's really great to have him on. Welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me on, fellas. And I appreciate you owning the word failures right there. Sometimes when I throw that out there, people kind of balk and are like, that didn't happen. So I appreciate you keeping it real with that.
Well, it's not failure. I don't look at it from an athletic standpoint. You know what I mean? I look at it as what the challenges you had to deal with, right? What people probably expected of you, and what you may have expected of yourself, and the way that people viewed it versus what actually happened, right? I mean, because in college football, a lot of things are not always in your control. People don't realize that. And then the things that are within your control sometimes can be difficult. Like, I've went through it myself. I played at University of Connecticut, and, I was a starter as a freshman, as a fullback. Skip Holtz comes in. This is back in the 90s, Max, so it was a long time ago. But Skip Holtz comes in. Doesn't like me as a fullback. I was a starter as a redshirt freshman. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? I sit out a year with a back injury, and then when I came back, I moved over to linebacker and had a fight to get playing time, and then ultimately was able to be a starter at that position. But it was a difficult road, and what you kind of deal with in the recruiting process, and what you expect when they're loving you up and you're really successful in high school, is not exactly always how it turns out for the majority of football players. Like, what people don't realize is that the ups and downs of college football is the overwhelming majority of the football players. Even great players, guys who have had wild success, goes through ups and downs. Tom Brady didn't play until late into his career in college, right? So everybody experiences it in some capacity. What I love is how you are willing to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people won't talk about it. They just want to tell you about all the touchdowns they throw, which you could easily go and do, right? And I had this success or that success. You could go and do that, but you choose to talk about the ups and downs of those things, which is really, really good. And I think it's important for athletes to hear that. I talked a little bit about that. I'd like for you to talk a little bit about your own journey in your words and what you experienced.
For sure. A little side note, just so I don't forget, the first game I ever called, which is part of my journey as a broadcaster, was first coach I ever met with in 2020 was Skip Holtz at La Tech. And to this day, he's the only head coach that his wife will pack goodie bags for the announcers up in the booth. So
that's
always got a soft spot for Skip Holtz.
His wife is incredible. She was on Jennifer. Yeah, she's incredible.
Love it. Yeah, the very first game I ever called for the network stadium was a double OT thriller where Skip Holtz's La Tech squad came away with the dub. So that'll always have a spot in my heart. But no, backing up, I don't know, 10, 15 years where my journey starts. I grew up in Seattle, a football hotbed, which is kind of like, what? Suburbs of Seattle? We were big. There was like a 6-year stretch for my high school, public high school outside of Seattle, nationally rated inside the top 25 consistently. And it was quite the run. Bunch of state titles, had a lot of success, and then was fortunate enough to be the 2013 Gatorade National High School Football Player of the Year. So was fortunate enough to basically be able to go anywhere in the country I wanted for school. Landed at USC and was a 5-star guy, expecting to take over for Matt Barkley when he moved on from USC into the NFL. And that was my plan, to start as a true freshman, play 3 years, win a national title, win a Heisman, and I'll see you in the NFL kind of thing. And that's not how it worked out. I was the backup for a few years there. Bunch of different coaching changes, Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, Clay Helton, Ed Orgeron, all the guys during that time. And then started in 2016. I'm the dude that got benched for Sam Darnold, which now as he's rocking and rolling in the NFL, that story only gets better and better. Happy for Sam. He's an awesome dude, and not surprised one bit that he has been able to turn it around. But then finished up at Pitt, started there in 2017. Unfortunately, got hurt week 6 or 7, whenever that was. So it was a right shoulder injury, and that's the last snap of football that I would ever play. I'd train for the NFL and give it a run and whatnot, but wasn't able to get back to a true competitive level. Had a couple tryouts, but nothing in terms of close to making a roster or anything like that. And then to what you've alluded to, at that point, it was kind of navigating the next phase of life as a guy who, only 6 years earlier, I was supposed to be the next Peyton Manning. Then, you fast forward 6, what feels like pretty quick years. And then I'm moving to New York, working a minimum wage job, trying to make it in the marketing world. And my 20s, a lot of it was about career pivots, different industries, and the whole time watering this broadcasting. I don't even know if I'll call it a dream. It kind of sounds like a dream, but I didn't even know I wanted to do it full time, because my relationship with football was a little sour, especially those first few years out. But I kind of knew in the back of my head, like, man, I was once the teenager that could watch 5 hours of NFL Network every day. Like, I have a feeling this love for football will come back around. And sure enough, 5, 6, 7 years later, it has. And I'm glossing over some steps, but now I'm full-time broadcaster and content creator on all the social media platforms. And call games for ESPN and their ACC network coverage. And it's been a blessing. The media side is definitely feel like I'm at a stage now where, confident that this is the path that I want to go down, having fulfillment covering the game. And, it's been nice to kind of share the game through my lens, which is a little bit unique.
I think that
that's awesome, Max. And not looks like the trials and tribulations and stuff that guys go throughout the process, right? Like that whole, all of that build up, and then to kind of just go through that and ultimately come out on top in the back end of it. You know what I mean? Because, a lot of these guys, I currently coach high school football here in New Jersey, and, they all have these dreams and these aspirations, and, mom and dad are telling them how great they are. And, this is the next step and all these kind of things. And you kind of look at it and, having been there, right? Like having gone through it, as an FCA player, and then transferred to a Division III program, and just playing at that next level, knowing how difficult it is on a daily basis to kind of go through that grind, for these younger kids, they really don't understand it. It's all, sunshine and rainbows and unicorns and all this, all this great, they have this picture perfect scene set up in their mind of what it's going to be. And when you come down to it, it's like, that really isn't it. Right. So, for you to have gone through that, right? Like, what are some of the things that you learned going through that process of, being that, hey, I'm coming in here as a freshman, and then kind of working through all that to where now you have a career ending injury. What was it like to go through that, and kind of what did you learn or take away from it that's now helped you in your broadcasting career?
Yeah, I think, I always viewed myself as a hardworking kid. I was lucky enough to have parents that didn't fall into that bucket that you just verbalized, in terms of like, my dad was the dad that would sit in like the top left-hand corner of the bleachers and wasn't in the like keeping up with the Joneses fest on the 50-yard line. And not that he wasn't, committed to me, but he was locked in as anyone. But he was very conscious, and my mom as well, of like, this was my journey, and they're having fun with it. They're observing, but it's my journey. And they weren't naive to the realities that there's going to be failures, and there's going to be times where I'm going to have to struggle through that. And my shit doesn't stank all the time, which so often. I'm old enough that I don't have kids, but I'm old enough to have seen countless parents that just get blindsided by the fact that, things aren't going to necessarily go perfect for their kid. And in my opinion, they kind of trap themselves where society, we've had this, hey, if I'm not, kind of boasting about my kid and painting my car that they made all-stars and posting everything, that then I don't love my kid. Well, then if you go that to like the 10th degree, well, then your kid's going to start learning that, I need to play well. I need to have success for then my parents to be happy and my parents to, this might be a stretch, but I've seen it before, like love me. And I'm lucky that I didn't have parents that were that way. Like my dad, obviously after a loss, we were bummed, but it wasn't this volatile nature of, being beholden to the outcome of my athletic performance dictating my relationship with my parents. But to answer your question more directly, learned how to become gritty and get through adversity. That's the biggest thing. I mean, I look back and I think a big reason why I've been able to kind of move forward in life and not kind of live in the past and, be pointing fingers and all that is when I look back, I'm proud about how I handled things when I got benched. And I'm proud of, how I got back up after I, ripped up my shoulder in the rehab process there. And I just think, even though what I always say is, even though my college career didn't work out, it wasn't because I didn't show up, or it wasn't because I didn't come in with the mentality of, having a work ethic that could have allowed me to have success. Like I put in the work to have success. It just didn't happen. And at that point, there's a certain, in a weird way, a peace that comes with it. And it's allowed me to move forward and feel like I'm more risk tolerant now. That's a big one that I feel like a lot of people don't talk about, where like my dream ever since I was a little kid, but then even into like my early adult years was, hey, I'm on a path to being an NFL quarterback. And if that doesn't happen in my little world, that was like worst case scenario. Like, how could I ever get through that? That's going to be miserable. It's going to be, I'm going to have like shame for that and all that. But then I got through that and it's like, oh, wow, I can get through this and I'm fine. I got friends, I got family. And it's allowed me, I think, in my 20s to take chances, take risks, put myself out there, build a YouTube channel and a broadcasting career by starting to film, YouTube videos in my kitchen, which if I hadn't have failed at football, maybe I feel like I'm too cool for that or things like that. Right. So the risk tolerance thing's a big one.
I think that's really important. The ability to put what you were as a person and as an athlete and not let that define what you're going to be in the future. Meaning being an athlete was a big part of what you were. Did you go, by the way, to Bellevue? Is that where you went or no? Where'd you go?
I went to Skyline. I went to
Skyline. Yeah. Skyline. Okay. Skyline. I was curious which high school it was. So
it's one of the two in that era.
What's that?
Yeah.
It's one of the two in that era.
It was one of the, that's what I thought. Yeah. So, it's really, I think this is one of the things that I think is so important. And it's funny because I was just up at UConn. We had our 30th reunion of our 1995 team, which had a really good year. And there was about, 30 guys there. And when you're that many years, was really about like who you were with and those guys that you were with. And that was kind of what made it really special. And it was what's amazing is, I'm not kidding when I say some people I haven't seen for almost 30 years, but you were right back there, just like you were when you were, in the locker room or hanging out with them or whatever, and in today's world, not as much when you play, but it was starting when you were coming in. But now it's obviously escalated at a different level where that part of sport is less and less the important thing. And like getting to the best level you can get to becomes the most important thing. And then if you don't play, like, where can I get to right away, immediately somewhere else? And why I bring it up is because I think that perspective that you have and that you were able to gain, I'm sure it wasn't easy. It's not easy for anybody, right? Especially, for our viewers, I mean, I remember when Max was in high school, 'cause I was running all my NUC camps at the time, and he was the elite of the elite. I mean, literally the top of the top. And so it's even harder, I do think, when you really are the top of the top. But to be able to do that and put it in perspective is really, really an important thing, because being an athlete is that's not who you are as a person. That's part of who you are. But there's a lot of other things that people can do. And there's a lot of kids, until, at least for me, until I was no longer an athlete, I didn't, and that wasn't what defined me anymore. Then I could really become the person that I wanted to be, and start to go down that path, right? And I think if a lot of kids allow athletics to define them completely, and don't, it's not that you have to have all these other hobbies while you're trying to be the best athlete. That's perfectly fine. Be the best athlete you can be the best student you can be, but know that there's something else when that ends, because it ultimately does end for everybody, even for pros who play 10 years, right? They're 30, they're your age, and now they're like, what do I do now, right? Like, I had 20 years, 25 years, as before I'm even older, and then another 25 years, hopefully, if you're healthy, to live past that, right? So you can live to your 80s, right? So that's 50, 60 years after your career that you've got to figure out a whole life that you have to have far beyond athletics. And obviously you've been able to have a broadcasting career, and you've started down that path. But it's really, really, it's really, really cool to see you have that perspective, because the guys that I've seen that have become really successful in life, I'm not even talking financially. I'm talking like having a family, like some of them have become really wealthy. That's great. You know what I mean? But they all seem to have that perspective. Like, sports was a part of them, whether they were a great player in college or they were middle of the road. And that was just a part of them. And the ones that like put it behind them and moved to whatever they wanted to do after that, really, really have thrived. And the ones that haven't, because I have friends that haven't, you know what I mean? Have struggled for 30 years. And that to me is really, really a sad thing that I don't want current athletes to get so caught up in, because of the fact that they are trying to now, and if it doesn't work out, and they're so hanging on every single thing from an athletic standpoint. When you transitioned and really started to move into your own career, what were some of the things that you thought about? Hey, I'd like to try this. This interests me. How did you develop those interests?
Yeah, it's a good question. And one thing, just hearing you walk through that, because I agree with everything you said, is a big thing is I always push players to give yourself grace to figure it out after you're done retiring or hanging it up. And what do I mean by that is, I think it's a little naive for coaches, guys like me, to come back and say like, hey, figure out what you like outside of football. Because I remember being in that seat, and I got 3 college degrees during my time there. And so you could say, oh, Max, you're like an academic guy. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was just, hey, they're paying me to go to school. Every class is like worth $8,000 at USC. Let me just keep stacking it up. But then my point there is, it took me, I went down a marketing path. I went down more of like a run and gun content path, working with some people. I was a commercial real estate broker for 4 years, all the while doing the various broadcasting gigs. And like, for me to, in hindsight, it looks like, oh, I snapped my fingers, and of course the broadcasting thing worked out. But that's not how it felt in the saddle. It was navigating that. It was moving different cities and living with roommates, the whole deal. So I always tell guys, like, I think when you're playing, just be open to the idea and understand that football's not the end all be all. But you don't have to have, because we've all seen those guys in a locker room, and it's like, Joey's going after to his, lawyer networking group right after, and there's like one guy, and like Joey's got it all figured out. But the reality is, like, most people aren't like that. Right. So if you're just warm to the idea, and then when you're done, it goes down a couple paths. The guys that don't give themselves grace, I find either just revert back to what's easy and right in front of them in their hometown. So they're doing exactly what their dad did, what their uncle did, whatever they have immediate exposure to. Or they go super risk adverse because life sped up on them and convince themselves they can't take that risk. And then they're bitter 3, 5, 10 years down the road because they didn't take advantage of that like 18-month window after they're done playing. So I just have seen so many teammates that have a USC degree, in my case, learn complex offensive schemes, might not be a book smart brainiac, but then don't even get exposure to, candidly, and I know white collar industry is not for everyone, but in the spirit of trying to utilize your degree for a lot of the audience listening, like go experiment with what XYZ industry is, because it might sound lame and you might see the Tom Brady quote about like, oh, I almost had to sell insurance. And then every athlete's like, oh, insurance sucks. Insurance is a pretty good lifestyle if you get with the right team. And so, just being kind of open to that and giving yourself grace to figure it out, especially in those early years when you're transitioning out of football.
A great point. It's funny because many of the guys that I play ball with went into insurance and are actually millionaires. They're millionaires. They're millionaires, right?
Like I vividly remember, like literally I remember listening to the Tom Brady quote, and I guarantee there's young quarterbacks that do it right now, of like all the motivational videos that literally use like, man, I almost had to sell insurance. Like it's the worst thing ever. And so literally I would be like, man, I got to make it to the NFL because I can't be a guy that like, has to do the lame white collar job. Well, there's a lot of guys making a great livelihood. So let's just call a spade of like, yes, we'd all want to be an NFL quarterback. But the fact that like selling insurance is failing, and obviously there's a lot of industries like that, that's just not the case.
Max, how about this? So a guy I play ball with who's about 4 years, he was a senior when I was a freshman. He played 15 years in the NFL. Okay. He owns an insurance company.
There we go.
So that's an example of someone who actually played 15 years in the NFL. I mean, he won Super Bowls and stuff like that, and owns an insurance company. And he first started, once he got done, he was trying to figure it out. And this was when he was already obviously almost 40 years old, right? Because he had played for a long time, and started selling insurance and ended up starting his own insurance company and does really, 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 really well. So that's that's an example of how people will have to take on another career. When you by the way, you could go into football, by the way, because amazingly now football, right? Like it's not being a player. It's so lucrative for coaches. I mean, for coaches, for SIDs, guys that are working in sports information, for marketing. I mean, guys who sell sponsorships in sports. I see never-ending on my LinkedIn. I see never-ending job posts for sports, right? Because that's what I work in, and that's what I do. And that's all. I always see job postings for it. That's all I see all the time. So there's plenty of opportunity if you want to stay in sports in some capacity, which until the last 15 years really was not as lucrative. So all the things that people complain about with coaching salaries and all that kind of stuff, and universities becoming businesses, the pro side of all of it is it's all the boats have been lifted up, right? And so what's happened is the rising tides lifted all boats, and you got a situation where there's all kinds of opportunities and things you never thought of in sports, which is really cool. So whereas before you might have to go get a quote unquote regular job, you can actually, if you figure it out and you pivot quick enough, you can start yourself down a path to be able to do, whatever is in podcasting. Obviously, is an opportunity. I mean, when I first got monetized on my YouTube channel, I was like, wait, what? I'm gonna get paid to make videos? Because I already had my business, so I was like, I'm gonna get paid to make videos now, so it allowed me to hire Derek to work with us and do all the stuff he's doing with the podcasting, which is phenomenal. So it's really, really cool. I'm curious if when you know, when you talk to athletes maybe that are you know, at USC or other places, and when you do your videos and stuff, do these athletes come and reach out to you and give you any feedback, or you know, what is kind of the new landscape thought process of athletes from your experience, and obviously broadcasting, you probably see it too.
Yeah, I would say from athletes in the saddle that are playing or have played, the feedback to my message is overwhelmingly positive, which I appreciate. And it's, hey, man, I relate to XYZ. I got hurt as well. I got benched as well. I had to transfer as well. I would say a lot of guys reach out to me with navigating the career pivot chapter, or I guess not even career pivot chapters, moving on from football and kind of like the what's next chapter. That's probably the most popular call that I get, especially from guys that were higher level recruits. But then, you know, some people might be listening and being like, oh, Max, why would people ever push back on your message? I get a decent amount of pushback for, you know, saying that, you know, my football career didn't work out, or that I didn't have success in college. And the pushback there, I think, comes from like oh, well, Max, you got to play Division I football. You know, how much of a blessing's that? And to me, I'm wired with both can exist. It was a blessing to play college football. It was completely disappointing with how it all played out. And like the realities of those feelings are just my lived experience. It's not that I'm, again, being like, you know, the negative is just like hanging over me every single day and I can't move forward with life. That's not true. But when you're working every single day in college for 5 years and you have very little success to show, or, you know, reward or accomplishments to show for that hard work, that's disappointing. That's why players don't push back on it, because they've been in the saddle. But then I think fans sometimes are like, Max, you're being too hard on yourself, which I appreciate. It's coming from a place of love, but it does not register with me. And I was a guy that like, you know, related to the Mamba mentality message of, you know, show up early, stay late.
That's who you were, right? Like that's who you, as a 5-star, right? Like you didn't get to being a 5-star by not having that mentality, that competitive nature, that look for what, like it kind of goes into the whole, like, you know, goals, or how you view, like how these guys view things, like what certain people see as success, right? High level competitors or guys that really push for that grind, have that like Mamba mentality. That's what should happen, right? Like that's expected, right? So, you know, being a 5-star recruit for some, right? Like that's, oh my goodness, like that's the greatest thing that's ever happened to them. Whereas, you know, guys like yourself, you have higher standards or goals, lofty goals. That's how you're wired and how you're programmed. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like that's just, you know, how I see it. Like guys, you don't get to be in, you know, Gatorade Player of the Year and all these other things without having a little bit of that. No, man, that's not good enough mentality.
100%. Yeah, I'm not sitting here saying I am Kobe Bryant or Tiger Woods with that mentality, but I definitely feel like I was down that lane in terms of the athlete in me. And to me, it's just like talking out both sides of your mouth. If you're one that celebrates the Mamba mentality, but then is like, oh, well, then Max, you can't be disappointed if you're not achieving the goals that you set out to. It'd be one thing if I was not realistic with my goals, but you know, I've sat on a couch in a post-spring meeting with Clay Helton looking at myself and Sam Darnold saying I have 2 NFL starting quarterbacks on my roster and I only can start one. And so now 30 years later, that dude's on a path to being the NFL MVP and I'm doing my own path, which is fine and great. But to sit here and say like, it would just be like, shucks, things didn't work out. To me, that's just not real life.
Right. And I think honestly, like most people never even achieve that level of anything. You know what I'm saying? Whether it doesn't have to be sports, like it could be career oriented or just school, or you know what I mean? Like, guy, a lot of society now, and we kind of talk about this, you see it kind of when you've been at different programs, right? And you may see it with broadcast. Some places are just okay, right? Like you look at the NFL itself, like there are some NFL teams, right? And I heard somebody talk about it yesterday where, you know, there are a couple NFL teams every year that are trying to win a Super Bowl. Like that's what they want to do. That's the goal. Everybody says that's the goal, but that's the goal, right? Whereas the majority of the NFL, just prints money. Like, we're okay being 500 and maybe making the playoffs. And like, look, we're still a success business, right? Like, that's a little bit of that kind of mentality of like, hey, we're okay being okay, right? Whereas, I like to put myself in that category as well. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not okay with a B plus. You know what I'm saying? Where, like, that's not okay. Like, oh, hey, a C. No, dude, that's not enough. Like, it's got to be an A plus 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 plus, and I'm still asking for extra credit. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of like how it works, how I view it.
Totally. And it's not they're not mutually exclusive. To me, you can have that mindset, but then also like move forward with your life if things don't work out. So I feel like so often when people hear that mindset, it's then, oh, if you hold yourself to that standard and it doesn't work out, well, then you're just depressed, miserable, bummed.
Right. No, that's where the pivot happens.
But then if it doesn't happen, find peace in the work that you had. Have the mindset of how, to this day, I say it was a blessing to play college football. The college football chapter wasn't awesome, but it was a blessing because it did genuinely give me perspective, life lessons, lifelong friends, things of that nature.
100%. Yes. Yeah. And to be honest, and probably aided in what you do now, right? Because now you can call a game and look at certain things and,
totally
diagnose what that quarterback is seeing and then relay it to, it's why I think like Greg Olson is one of the phenomenal broadcaster in what he's doing. He's the son of a coach, right? He kind of sees that world from a different perspective. And I obviously, I literally grew up next to the town next to where he lived. What's that? You all good?
Oh, yeah, comedy. Oh, fire alarm.
This happened yesterday. You okay? Everything good? Nothing's burning down over there? Got to take those batteries out or something, buddy.
I'll pull all the alarms off. Keep going.
Oh my God. All right. Well, look, Max, this is what this just goes right back to what we're talking about, right? Like, sometimes you got to pivot and you got to go with what it is and kind of see it. Now for you, Max, like, I think it's so interesting, right? Because you kind of made that move from USC to Pitt, right? At a time when that really, it might have been just, there was no transfer portal, right? If I'm not mistaken at that time, kind of the way you did it, right? As a graduate transfer is what a lot of guys are doing now, only there's like money attached to it, right? You were doing it as an opportunity to go play somewhere else. A lot of these guys are for monetary value now with all the NIL and whatnot like nobody's doing that to raise their draft stock, right? Like, I even heard Kenny Pickett. He said, look, if I would have left my last year and went somewhere else for 1 year, I would have made a lot more money than I did staying where I was. I'm curious to know, like, because you kind of see both sides of it in terms of, with the broadcasting and then kind of having been there. How do you see the overall landscape of college football right now?
Yeah, I'm not as down on, I don't view the whole money side as negatively as a lot of my peers in the broadcasting space. And here's kind of one scenario I'll depict. I think a lot of the voices talking on TV and podcasts are guys that had great playing careers and therefore look back on their college playing experience with very fond memories. And they can drive back to the campus and, they always get the field pass and they have all the friends and memories and coaches and all that. But for a lot of guys, hence like we've talked about, that's just not the case. You could make the argument that's the majority of the guys. But it's to me, it's like, let's just say 50-50. And the reason I bring that up is because for a huge portion of those guys, they're not going to have the nostalgic, this was an awesome, or like this was an unreal life experience. I'm coming back every single year to check in on the program. And they do get money that is life-changing money for a lot of these guys in this scenario. And so, we can poo-poo, or the collective football, we can kind of be like, they're chasing money and college football's lost its, old ways, which there are downsides to that. Don't get me wrong. The upside is all these kids, because I played with a lot of them, guys that were 5-star recruits that walk out of football with no money and might get, a undrafted free agent contract for however much money, like when they're all said and done, maybe. But then now that same guy today walks out of college football having made $500,000. That's like real money. That's real life-changing money. And I think I just sometimes think we feel guilty of, or fall guilty to, like, we turn on ESPN and every single guy that's talking had an awesome college football experience. So his perspective is going to be skewed towards, man, I miss the old days where now I can go back and I had all my roommates and everything was great and all that. A lot of guys don't have that. I don't mean to be negative, Nancy, but I think the money thing is very real. And the reality is, like, a lot of my USC teammates, they get done playing. Most guys don't use their degree. So this idea that, like, we had before, and USC might be skewed because it's a lot of guys that are chasing the NFL, and it's a different pocket. But, like, it wasn't like the old system was just perfect where, hey, if you stayed at USC for 4 years, you immediately get the perfect job and the perfect life and all that. That's not the case. But I do know the case now is you have guys that are coming out of college football with life-changing money. Whether they spend it or whether they spend it correctly, that's a different conversation. But they're at least getting those funds.
Yeah, 100%. There's no doubt about that.
I think that part, the fact that they can make money. My brief interlude before the alarm goes off again, I guess. The ability for them to make money, I think, is a good thing. I think also it's different. What was big now is it's created different, not just levels athletically. There's always been different levels athletically, obviously, but what it's created is if you're in the top tier, meaning like the big FBS schools from the big conferences, Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Big 12, right? If you're in those four conferences, the world is going to be a professional world to an extent, or you could say quasi-professional. I don't know, but if you get money, I think some money you're getting professional. And the lower levels, the group of 4, 5, whatever the heck they call it, like the level that UConn, where I played at, is now, that is still some level of professional. So, for example, like at UConn, every athlete, now a lot of it's because of basketball, made a lot of money, but not in their case, but every athlete is getting paid there at UConn. And then obviously with NIL, we have a receiver that's, making multiple six figures, and a couple other guys. But even at that level, those guys are quasi-professionals. Obviously, at the USC level, you got guys that are making could be making a boatload of money. Some of those guys might be making on the low end $50K, and then the high end millions, right? So those things, that part has changed, and I do agree with you that those relationships, even back then, because of the competitive nature, even when you weren't getting paid, per se, or unless they dropped some money off of Max Browne's door when he, because he was such a high level recruit. Other than that, nobody was getting paid. Okay. From that standpoint, it becomes a thing where, the only thing that really was a big deal from a college standpoint is the competitive level. So the relationships, because the competitive level is so high, even back when you were playing, it's more difficult, even though you like the guys, but it's more difficult to develop those relationships when you're all fighting, even though you're on the same team. It's one of the unique dynamics of college sports that people don't realize, especially team sports. Obviously, track, it's not the same, but team sports, you could be friends with the guy that you're competing with for the starting job. So there's a level of strain on that relationship, no matter how much you like them, no matter how much you're like, this guy, is a guy I really like hanging out with. And that part, because you're chasing after certain things. I would do think, like at the Division III level, maybe, or Division II level, like the lower down, that they might have some of the kind of ability to have more of a regular relationship with their teammates, in the sense that more guys are there for probably 4 years, is my guess, right? So I think there's more of that, and I think that's a good thing. By the way, I think all of that's a good thing, because I think that athletes should be able to. Now you do have a choice of what you want to pursue. Like, you really do have a choice of what you want. If you really are a person that can be at that level, if you were coming out of college now, coming into college now, even if you didn't have like a career where you were a 4-year star or something, you could actually get a certain level of financial success. You would have gotten money coming out of high school. Someone would have given you a good amount of money, and
if not in high school.
Yes, right. It's something, yeah, and that does give players a certain level. I think could give players, if they have the right approach, a certain level of mental security in the fact that, hey, you know what, all this that I worked for all this time, there is some payoff. Even if I don't get the biggest payoff, I'm getting some payoff out of it, not just my degree. And I think it is important because college degrees are not worth as much as they once were. Now, USC is obviously a fantastic school. Where you went in and at Pitt is obviously a fantastic school, but not all the schools are fantastic schools academically, right? So the college degree is not worth the same amount in the job marketplace as it once was for a young person. And I liken it to like many, many years ago, a high school diploma was a big deal, right? Well, basically, a college degree is like what a high school diploma used to be. It's almost like a requirement for you to do anything, period, but not necessarily something that's setting you far ahead. Now it's like, okay, well, if you're going to college, are you going to be a doctor? You know what I mean? But you went and you got, multiple degrees, and you're in a field probably that, yes, you use some of the stuff that you learn, but you probably don't quote unquote needed that degree, right? To get
totally.
that. And I think that that's what's changed. And I think that that's a good thing for athletes. This is one of the reasons why I think it's a good thing for them to be able to get, if they're good enough to be at the highest level, some level of financial compensation. And the players that at Division III level or Division II level kind of understand that, it's highly unlikely that they're, the very, very rare exception that they can move up. And those guys can begin right away pursuing their next career, even if they are playing football as part of coming into the school. They don't have to think about it in from that fashion, right? Not that they're not working as hard as the players at the highest level. I'm not saying that they aren't, but they can focus in those areas. So I think those tiers are a good thing. The hardest thing, and I'd love for you to touch base on this. The hardest thing is accepting what level you're at when you're coming out, and then going from there versus saying going to trying to pursue something and coming away with nothing, or being disappointed that you didn't get to the level that you thought, and then just saying, hey, I'm not even going to take advantage of the other opportunities I might have. So I'm curious your thoughts on that, and what you kind of, anybody that, on your podcast or whatever, what you kind of, how you address that part.
Totally. Yeah. I think everyone's wired differently. And I've seen, people in my inner circle, all sorts of different scenarios. The best man at my wedding was receiver at Eastern Washington, D1 AA. He was slot receiver with Cooper Kupp and all the boys, and had a phenomenal run. And I think he always, probably still to this day, was like, I could have gone on at Washington State and had that true Division I experience. And I think that competitive mentality is fine, but he did settle in at Eastern Washington, and I think had a great college football experience. I do think, to your point, my last comment was more through a true Division I lens with those comments. I do think it's a harder situation now with the Division I schools, top level schools, where that the purity of that experience at the D2 and D3 level is not what it once was. And that just kind of is reality. And I think you need to assess where you're at of like, if you love football, well, then keep at it. Great. There's a place for you in those levels. But I've also seen another one of my friends was kind of a fringe guy, was like, hey, I could play probably D3, D2 basketball and football, or I could go to frat row and just have a good old time. Yeah. He went the latter, and I think he is glad he went that way. And that's, there's a different mold for everyone. I got another friend that was a walk-on safety at Washington State, had a chip on his shoulder that I can play at Division I level, transfers to Arizona State with his position coach, and was one of the best Arizona State safeties during the Todd Graham era. So, hey, he was right. Other coaches who passed up on him in the recruiting era were wrong. And his mentality, his approach was great. My older brother, state player of the year in the state of Washington, didn't have necessarily all the measurables, went to Division III football, had a great experience, has a lot of like those friends to this day. And I think he's probably glad that he went, I think in hindsight, he's like, maybe I should have walked on a Division I, but more like, regardless, had a great experience. And so there's just so many different molds. And I think it's on the individual person to say, like, how are you wired? Where are you at in this process? And there's so many factors at play. And I don't think there's any right way to do it. But one thing that is for sure, nowadays with all the player mobility, I don't think you're stuck to just one lane. And there's ways to move up and ways to move down, for better or for worse.
And we've talked about that, Max, numerous times on with now. It's kind of all changed, right? Because when you were getting recruited, and obviously myself and Coach Shu, like, that was, hey, this is the biggest decision, because for the next 4 years or 5 years, this is your spot. This is where you're going to be, right? You didn't see guys bumping down, or definitely not guys transferring up, right? Because there were just rules that kind of like you had to sit, right? Like, nobody was really doing that. Now, the whole recruiting thing, we've talked to numerous guys, Division II level, FCS, Division III, where they're recruiting guys with the mentality that this guy's going to be here for 2 and then going to bump up and go somewhere else. And they're accepting of that, and actually have kind of turned the lens and said, look, we will promote that. We would like to be that, right? Because in their eyes, I'm still getting a high level player that's going to come into my program, and he's he's going to work his ass off because he's got a chip on his shoulder, but he knows that there's a future in ultimately getting what he feels he was shorted with coming out of high school. So they're now, hey, come on. Where you got to go. And then it'll just be another 2-year cycle, right? So it's kind of changed the recruiting world and kind of the decision-making process with that. In that now we see a lot of programs less on the high school guy, because there's not time to take that guy and develop him for 3 years. Guys are getting fired after 2. So I need this guy to come. I'll take a portal guy that can come in, plug and play, and we'll just kind of work that.
Totally. 2 examples just to double down on that point. We were talking with Dave Doran, NC State's head coach, a couple of weeks ago. I've had the same conversation with Justin Wilcox at Cal, where they're saying, what have you learned as a head coach in like the 3 or 4 years of this portal era? And both guys said that I would rather take the guy who's coming up a level or coming up a conference that has a chip on their shoulder, rather than the bounce back former big time recruit, because the mentality is different. And you have proof of concept that those, hey, even if you're at Wyoming or even if you're at Eastern Washington, if you produced at that level and I can see it on film, there's less guesswork. Your ceiling might not be as high, but there's less guesswork than the guy who has been at Alabama, but there's a reason he's been there 3 years and hasn't played. So I've heard that from multiple coaches. And then I'm literally working on a video right now where Ole Miss's quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss, the Division II quarterback, I think he is going to change.
Ferris State, I think, or Ferris State, something like that, right?
I think he's going to change that. I'd be willing to bet they're Division I schools that have changed their conversation around how they're approaching not only the portal, but the backup quarterback specifically, because of Chambliss's success, where it's, hey, let's go after guys who have produced at a lower level, but I can see it on tape. And even if they're not going to be my starter, hey, I'll go pay Trinidad $250K to be my backup quarterback at Ole Miss. Like, I don't think that's crazy talk to see that across some of the Power 2 and maybe Big 12 and ACC schools as well.
I think that's a phenomenal point. Diego Pavia is a great example of it. Actually, the 3 best players on offense for Vanderbilt are New Mexico State players. So the tight end, running back, and then obviously Pavia. So where does that go in recruiting? What those guys did is they produced at the level they were at. Pavia probably doesn't have this. I'm sure he'll get an opportunity at the NFL level to get a chance. But I think it would be very highly unlikely if he would have that same level of success that he's having in college at the NFL level. But he's a great example, another great example of someone who produced and is playing in the SEC, is wildly successful in the SEC, making a ton of money as a player, milking as many years as he can, making that money. You know what I mean? If Papi can stay there forever, he will. And he's smart enough to understand that opportunity as well for himself. And by the way, he's now also getting like degrees from Vanderbilt too. You know, stacking that in there into the mix. But I think those are kind of like those two stories. You know, the Ole Miss quarterback and Papi are great stories. And I get in this conversation all the time. I'm like, why are we not looking at a guy that threw for 5,000 yards as our at an FCS level as a possible replacement for the guy that we have at UConn right now, right? Like, and by the way, that guy played at Maine before he came to UConn. So, and he has 22 touchdowns and 0 interceptions this year, and is like top 20 passer in the country. He's on his, I think, his 7th year or 6th year or something like that in college. Got paid 0 for all those years until this year when he became the starter at the middle of last year, and it's proven obviously that he could play at the level that UConn's at. And so it's I think that's a really, really great point. And that guy was brought in really as a backup and ended up becoming a starter and replaced a guy who was a All-American, I think, out of high school, and went to Oklahoma, then went to Wisconsin and was a backup at Wisconsin, and he was the original starter. And it's not that he isn't good; he's just the other guy's better, you know. So that's a really good example. And he had played at, he was a starter at Maine. So it's one of those things that, like, I think college coaches really are going to start to evaluate, because it's some places it's about getting an NFL potential guy, no doubt, or some positions it might be. I think quarterback in particular, there obviously if you have the upside and he hits as a player, no doubt, home run, right? But in some cases, you might be better off with a guy who you just know is going to produce for you, is going to be able to produce for you, and you could surround him with more of those guys at the highest level, and you get yourself, obviously linemen, which are, as you know, as a quarterback, are the most important thing that you need is great offensive linemen. Get those guys as guys that are 5 stars that have, that are willing to be great players. And then you could really, build a great unit around that. I think that's really cool. I do love the mobility part. I think the mobility part is cool when I see, like, hey, this guy was at so-and-so. Wait, where was he at last year? And this guy's the top receiver for whatever the school is.
I get excited about it.
And you know what? It also gives players who are at the highest level, and this is the truth too, if they need to move, right, maybe they are not going to get the opportunity at the place they're at. There might be a guy better than them, or even if he's not better than them, the coach thinks he's better than them, because that's the only thing that matters.
Or there's a coaching change, right? Like,
it doesn't mean you're not better. It means that the coach thinks that this guy's better for whatever he's trying to do. So you go somewhere where they think that you're the better guy for what they're trying to do, wherever that is, high, equal level, lower level, whatever that is. And you could go if you want to play and get that opportunity. And I think that part is cool. The fans love to talk about, because it's great clickbait. Like, when we talk about it, like, the stuff that goes viral on our shorts is if we complain about the transfer portal, or if we complain about players getting too much money, or coaches getting too much money. And you know this because you're on YouTube too. You do put any videos out like that, you're gonna go right into the algorithm and do real well. And then when I go on, I use this software vidIQ to go, and by the way, I don't know if you use it, but it's great for optimization. The thing it loves is like wild statements and negative statements to get your ranking higher. When you look at it and you're like, try to optimize it, and you're like, wow, that's what vidIQ thinks should be Should be my title. You're like, I'm interviewing Max Browne. I like to talk about Max Browne. And then it'll come back and say, the insane career of Max Browne. And that's what gets a 97, rating or whatever. But the truth is, it really is a great opportunity for everybody. It really is a great opportunity for everybody. And yes, there are negatives. Yes, there are players that you can make mistakes on as coaches. But that's the job of a coach to figure that stuff out. Right? That's why they get paid, especially at the highest level. I could understand maybe D3, but at the highest level, when coaches complain about themselves getting fired, I'm like, well, what did you think you signed up for?
Yeah,
I love Sarkisian. You played for him. I think he's a phenomenal coach. When he's like, well, who are they going to hire? They're going to hire somebody. They're going to find a guy to be the head coach, and they're going to pay him a lot of money. And no matter what happens in that person's career at Auburn, or they are now a rich man, or their family is rich now. No matter whether they win one game or they win 100 games in their career, because those guys are getting multi-million-dollar contracts. So, I can't feel sorry. I can't feel sorry for a college coach who becomes in a tax bracket that I can only dream about being in. So I can't be upset about it. And as an entrepreneur, I say, hey, make as much money as you can, but don't complain about the opportunity when you're making way more money than every other person, including your GAs who are running around getting you coffee. You know what I mean? So those are – I'm curious your thoughts on all that. I talked about a bunch of different things. I'll let you dive in, Max, and say what you feel.
No, it's all good stuff. I mean, you're spot on. Your coaches got to know what they sign up for. I do think Sark's point, this coaching cycle is fascinating just because there are so many jobs open, and it does feel like the candidate pool is very slim. In terms of, it feels like every year there's always 3 names.
Hires, right?
Yeah, you hear the John Sumrall and some of the up and coming guys, but in the grand scheme of up and coming guys, it feels slim. It's a lot of the same names, and I guess my take here, maybe for your audience, is I just think the college football fan and administrator is in a recalibration phase where you need to reset your expectations for what a good season is, for what the leash means for your head coach, for I'm in group chats USC fans, and I get it. The standard is the standard, but USC fans think they should be 11-1 every single year. Well, so does 25 other programs. And oh, by the way, you're looking over there, and Texas Tech has totally revamped where they're at. Vandy's revamped where they're at. All sorts of different schools.
Part of it is, and I'll let you continue. Part of it is the pool is slimmer because one agent controls the vast majority of the top tier coaches. And that one agent has all of those guys that he will push who are within his, because he's been so sick. It's kind of one of those things. He's so successful as a coach's agent and has placed so many successful coaches that when they get fired at mass, that's basically happened. And those were mostly his guys. And they're like, well, who do we go to get another guy other than him? Because he's don't you think the coaching market would still be where it's at even without Jimmy Sexton though? I do think, but I just think he represents so many of them that the perception among other coaches is well, who are you gonna get? Because Jimmy Sexton represents all the top. You know what I'm saying? All the top. Yeah. I'm sure there are other guys that represent guys, but he represents almost every, I would say, top tier guy.
Yeah, and I think, on the margins, he's getting James Franklin the extra little notch to his buyout, or the extra year maybe, because he's I also know they're talking about Sark and all that. So I think your point's fair, but I also think I saw the LSU governor's comments about how we're in this situation only because of Jimmy Sexton, the agent. And I'm get out of here, dude. If there were more agents, it would be the same thing. And we're seeing it right now. Again, I'm making a video on it right now. 3 weeks ago, all the chatter was these contracts are ridiculous. Why are we paying James Franklin $48 million and Brian Kelly $50 million not to coach? And then we fast forward 14 days. Rhett Lashley gets a contract. Matt Rule gets an extension. Matt Rule's lost his last 2 games, and it's a self-feeding cycle. This coaching bubble's not going anywhere because the incentives continue to align where if you're Nebraska, you don't want Matt Rule to walk. I mean, maybe their temperament's changed in the past 2 weeks. If you're SMU, shit, we got boosters. We don't want Rhett Lashley to walk to Arkansas. You pay 100%. Them, and it's just this self-feeding cycle that ain't going anywhere. And to your point, coaches, you know what you signed up for? A big reason you signed up for it is because of how healthy the compensation is, and there's good and bad sides to both of that.
No, there's no doubt about it. And look, it's just like, I mean, being a head coach at the highest level, even though you're in the press a lot more than the CEO of a company, obviously there's a different level of stress because of that with recruiting. But the CEO of large corporations are getting paid similar capacities to head coaches, and obviously incentive packages that couldn't end up making them billionaires. And they have, if they don't perform, that's why they have, like, people. If you look at any, Goldman Sachs, if you looked at their contracts, they have golden parachutes within their contracts. And let's say they're making $10 million a year, and then plus whatever incentives. But if they're not performing, they get fired, and they're gonna give them $20 million to say, get the heck out of here, and that's gonna happen, and it happens a lot. Like the CEO of Jamie Dimon, like, he's the rare CEO who has lasted, much like the Nick Saban he's like the Nick Saban of finance, in the sense that he's lasted so long and had so much success. But most of these guys are much like a college football coach. They got their CEOs for a few years. Yeah, goes good in the beginning. Shareholders don't like. Shareholders are like, hey man, we're not making enough money on our stock. They're out. They get paid. They're wealthy for the rest of their life. The next guy comes in. College football is a lot like that because the demands are and the expectations are highly unrealistic, because much like companies that have shareholders, college football has fans and boosters, right? So in companies, you have board of directors and shareholders. Football, you have boosters and you have fans, right? And those people are going to place that same demand in their mind. And it's really interesting with, I think is interesting to your point, is that the fan and booster influence, because of paying players too, is at its highest level that it's ever been. Yeah, my favorite 30 for 30 is one of my favorite 30 for 30s. I wish they would come back with some more of those. I think they like, I don't know if ESPN burned their thread by knocking them out so many at a time, but the SMU one where they had the guys on payroll in the early
Pony Express,
Pony Express, like that's, they were like, oh my God, the boosters are out of control. Death penalty to SMU, which set them back about 30 years in the football program until now. But that pales in comparison to the influence that boosters and fans have today. It's not even remotely close, because if you are investing, or a group of you are investing, Max Browne and his friends decide that they're going to all pull their money together and get the very best quarterback and running back known to mankind to come to their school, you better believe that the athletic director is going to be on the phone with you every single day and making sure that you get everything you need. And it's not just making sure you get the players you need, but making sure you and your family get everything you need within USC's campus and the program. So that good.
And I think one thing that's changed with that is 4 years ago, a common narrative was, oh, if these boosters don't see a ROI on the millions that they're donating, that then they're going to back out. So you better win right away. That ain't the case, because I think boosters are now seeing what Texas Tech's doing, seeing what Vandy's doing, seeing what Indiana's doing. And it's like proof of concept, smacking them right in the face that if you show up with money at scale year after year, you, Mr. Booster, that has more money than they know what to do with, can literally bring your program to prominence. We saw Phil Knight do it, obviously, with Oregon, but Indiana's the same way. And yeah, I mean, it's the first of many, and that's why a lot of these quarterback contracts are going to be even more nuts than they were last year. I saw everyone being like, "Oh, Carson Beck's getting $4 million. That's absolutely crazy." It's going to skyrocket even more because you're a program like Auburn that swung and missed twice on your quarterbacks in the portal. You're going to get a new head coach in there, and you're going to say, "Hey, Pitt, Mason Heinschel, we'll pay you $6 million next year. Enough of this shit. We want to play quarterback at a high level." That's what's going to happen. And then you have 10, 12 schools all thinking that way. The money in these contracts for the top end, it's only going to get higher. And guys, I do got to dash here in a few minutes, but that's my take on that front.
No, I'll let you go. I'll tell you what's wild. So at UConn, I don't know if you've ever heard, you probably have, but Charlie D'Amelio, who's like the top influencer.
Yep.
You know, like she was originally like a TikTok dancer, their whole family. Well, they're UConn. The father's a UConn grad a few years before I was there. Or maybe he might have been there maybe when I was young or as a freshman. I mean, he is like the guy, you know what I mean, at UConn. And I see it firsthand as far as how, you know, whatever he would like to get done is you're gonna listen to it.
It's gonna get done. It's gonna get done.
Listen to it. And it's so interesting because I you know, I'm sure there are other places where they're influenced, but it's one of the few places where I've seen that actually a family made their money in the influencer space, and that like that's where they were. Now they're marketing all that kind of stuff, but in the influencer space where they're actually having a gigantic impact. And obviously UConn football's big, but not like basketball is. Basketball, the impact is unbelievable. Like the players we're able to get in basketball, it's insane what we're able to get, you know? So, and obviously we have a great coach on the men's side and women's side, but it's insane what you're able to get. But I don't want to hold you up anymore. Max, listen, you're doing amazing things. And like I said, I enjoy your stuff, your podcast, your shorts. They're great. They come into my feed, so your algorithm hits me. You know what I mean? So that's
love that. Thing. Love that.
And keep doing what you're doing, dude. It's great. And I love seeing someone share their experiences. And like I said, like to our audience, there's nobody that was at a higher level than Max. So you know. It's important to learn and listen to the things that it's like to be that level of a recruit and be that level of a player. It's very, very rare. You were in rare air as an athlete. I mean, you really, really are an elite of the elite, and it's great to see you parlay that and be able to parlay things that you did. You invested a lot of time as an athlete and be able to parlay it into your career and figuring that out and having a lot of success with it. It's awesome. Kudos to you. It's tremendous.
Thanks, fellas. I appreciate it. No, it's good chat, and appreciate those kinds of words, and glad the message is resonating, man. It means a lot.
No doubt. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate
Thanks so much,
you.
Max. Good luck, man.
All right.
Talk soon.
Bye. Great stuff, dude. I've been really, really impactful. By the way, is that the second day in a row that I had that alarm go off? I think it is. Or it was the other day. Maybe it was yesterday. It had to be yesterday, right? At the end of our pod, it went off. Right?
Yeah, like literally, that's how we got ended. So I looked at my phone. I hit send. Obviously, I didn't on a message to be like, "Hey, did the house burn down?" Like, you know what I mean? I was like, I hadn't heard from you. I was like, dude, I don't know if he's like with a hose right now or he's like, you know, half the house is like shit. Like, there goes Troy's freaking basketball shoes up in flames. I don't know. I was like, oh shit.
Listen, I'm worried about all the equipment I bought.
I'll tell you what, it's always, and obviously, like, for our audience, you know what I mean? Like, to understand, really, just all you have to do is really Google Max's name and see where he came from. And the you know, you could look at his statistics. I mean, you want to look at a guy who was the highest of the highs to now kind of really in a lot of eyes, like totally disappointing career, right? When people just kind of look at it. But I mean, the 3 years he played at USC, Dave, they were 12-2, 11-3, 14-0.
Yeah.
You know, he threw for, like, it's incredible to kind of look at the statistics or whatever, but to handle all of that hype on your shoulders, literally being a 5-star recruit at one of the most prominent historical college programs, and then to go to Pitt, right? And to have it all end the season or a career-ending injury, you know what I mean? Like, to now pivot, own it, right? Go back and kind of get into the world that, he's basically lived his entire life right now with broadcasting and doing all those things. We see a lot of these guys get into that, to stay around the game, but to kind of own it and give back and not just sit there and be like, well, it was because, I had 3 head coaches who or, whatever, to not just make excuses in an era where I feel like everybody's looking for the easy way, the excuse, to kind of own that and take that angle into how he's doing things. Like, it's really good to hear from the guy who literally was hands down the number 1 player in the country in his class, right? In the recruiting class. Like, when he said and he could have gone to any school he wanted to, he literally could have picked any school he wanted to go to, right? And then ultimately chose USC, right? Which is no easy peasy decision in itself, to go there and to play for Stark and Lane and Clay Hill, right? Like, all of these big name guys that you look at now and they're doing all these big things, like, and then look, he's successful as hell. Like, and like you said, by definition, a lot of people would have looked at, hey man, you played at USC and Pitt, like, that's success in itself, but not for a guy that's programmed like that. And I think that's the whole, to come full circle with it, like, guys that are 5 stars are different. And that's the mentality that it takes to be the 5-star. And even if you have that mentality, it still might not work out, right? And I think that's kind of where it all comes down.
That's an important point.
You know what I mean?
That is, it's one of those things, like, it's important to understand. I'm not telling any, like, my father used to always be like, I don't know if your father's like, but you need to have a backup, what you would call like a backup plan.
100%.
Now, I don't love the word backup plan. You know,
no, because it puts it at a lesser scale, dude. You need to have a different option.
You need to figure out what are some of the things that you might enjoy besides football, whatever your sport is. Okay,
right?
Not because it could go away, because it will go away at some point. And you want them to understand that, and no matter how, I even say this to my son now. I was saying, like, you have to do good in school, okay? Because even if
that's your
and you can't, like, I'm not gonna kill dreams, but I say, hey, listen,
reality.
Even if you were the greatest pro athlete of all time, Tom Brady. Okay,
there you go. Yep.
Your mid-40s. You're going to live for another 40 years. You're going to have to figure out
what you're going to do. Majority of your life happens after this sport thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that. This is a small.
So develop other talents. Develop something 100%. You like.
And especially now with access to so much more than we ever had, right? Yeah. In terms of this, like, just social media opens up windows to see things, and the networking and all those things that, like, we never had. You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't know about some of these things because that wasn't what was in your 10-mile radius of where you grew up, right? Like, that was a statistic that always blew me away. It was like, hey, majority, I think it was like 70% of people never move further than like 13 miles away from where they grew up.
Right.
Like, that's a real thing, right? Like, you go back in history and you look at it, people didn't move around because, just moving itself, like, just the actual logistics of trying to get somewhere else, like horse and carriage, right? And you had the car. Now with this access planes, now you can go and do all this shit. Like, dude, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can go and do all that. And the same thing goes for, like, these guys, like, if, like, the jobs that we grew up with, like, hey, these are good jobs. Like, now right? Like there are jobs that didn't exist when we were in school
Correct.
or that we were looking forward to. And the old heads in the room will always, kind of.
This didn't exist.
Absolutely not. Like you didn't do this. Like, dude, like a phone call, like with 2 different people was something incredible, right? Like we're just talking about.
I would never do anything in media. Like
this is stuff like that when you like, I love it. You like watch the Jetsons and shit like that. And they're talking about like the future and all that. It's all shit we have now. You know what I mean? Like just like carrying around a cell phone, right? Because we were in an era when that wasn't a thing. And all of a sudden now that's everybody's livelihood, right? Like how many people could you pull right now and be like, oh, I don't have a cell phone. I still have a landline. Like there's just so many things that this world now has that can do so. And to kind of full circle with like Max himself, and like you talked about staying in the world of sports. There are so many jobs now within sports, not just, I mean, look, we could look at football itself and just literally look at a college football team. And if you wanted to be a part of that, have to be a coach. That's not even the case anymore. You could do one of 50 different jobs within a staff in football, right? Like NFL, like any of these sports that are, there's 1,000 jobs that might not have anything to do with actually playing the sport or the sport itself. I mean, you could go be the GM of a roster or go, be the equipment guy or the social media guy or just the film person that knows very little about football itself or the sport itself and have a really successful career just doing that stuff. Which is, I think it's awesome because it opens up a lot of windows and doors for people that want to be in sports. You no longer have to be like a player or a coach to be within sports and have a high success rate at a career and be very lucrative for yourself.
No, there's no doubt about it. And that is like everyone's like, oh, AI is going to displace all these jobs. It will displace a lot of jobs. But you know what it will also do? It'll create other opportunities. And
100%.
The horse and buggy, was the big thing before the car. I mean, I'm sure.
Right.
Listen, as much of as a revolution AI is, I could only imagine if you grew up back then and everyone rode a horse and there were non-paved roads. And all of a sudden people are like, wait a minute, like car, like what am I going to do if I make horseshoes and I make plows and I make like, what am I going to do? Well,
there were people that walked around and shoveled up the shit from the horses and that was their job. Like now we get cars all of a sudden. We have gas stations, gas station attendants, mini marts, people working, you know what I mean? Like everything continues to grow and expand and create new things. But if you're so stuck in the past, and it's kind of a great, connection with like Max, if he had stayed in that world of poor me, right? Like I was this, I'm supposed to be this. If he had just like stuck his head in the dirt and not used what he got from USC and Pitt to try these different career paths, hey, maybe marketing's not for me. Maybe this is, something. It wouldn't be there. Like these opportunities wouldn't be there for guys. Sports are a great thing to teach you about life, but it's not the end all be all of what life has to be.
Dead on. Couldn't have said it better. That was a fun podcast.
Yeah, man. I was really shocked with how fast he kind of answered and was like, "Sure, dude, I'll come on." You know what I mean? Because I don't know. Like for me, like that's a big works for fucking ESPN, dude. He was a 5-star, whatever. You see the content he pushes out, like you know what I mean? Like for me, it's like I love it when I just cold message these guys like out of nowhere and they respond like, "Hey, dude, what's going on?"
It's hard to realize it because it's not celebrity like you're walking down the street celebrity. But
it's not that LA vibe of like, holy shit, there's Brad Pitt. You know what I mean? That's the old school way.
What I'm saying is with our how big our channel is, it's not the way that this stuff is, it's not celebrity in the sense that you're going to walk down the street and everyone's going to know you. That's not how it works. What it is
Right.
that everybody within the space, right, or people
Correct.
that are involved
Yes.
can
Yes.
look
Yes.
you
Yes.
up, can literally look. If you reach out to somebody and say, "Hey, go, you know, you don't want to believe me? Go just go to the channel." You know what I mean? Go look at the channel.
Well, that's
And
what I
can
do.
go to
You know
the-
what I mean? When people are like, "Hey, can you send me some?" I say, "Hey, look, go check out Coach Drew's channel." Right? Like this is kind of how the, what I may send them like a specific episode or something that we've done. But
Yeah.
I mean, Dave, we're coming up on 250 episodes of this thing. You know what I'm saying? Like we've been doing this for a while now, right? And it's kind of run the and again, always go back to this, like the variety of the guests that we speak to, right? In regards to across the board, like there's always something that could hit for somebody, right? We're not like, just in kind of how you see some of these go is people really either they put themselves into these categories of like, hey, we're this type of show. But for us, with like the broadness and the variety within it, I think just allows us to kind of hit home, with certain groups or just in general. People are going to tune in because they're going to take something away from it, irregardless of the guest's main viewpoint or how we do it. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's where a lot of people kind of, they go a certain way because they pigeonhole themselves into, hey, we can only talk about this kind of stuff. And I think the format in which we do it, where it's more of a conversation than it is like a question and answer period, like we just kind of take it where we go. And I think that is an appeal for a lot of guests because they can talk about whatever they want to talk about and we just kind of roll with it.
Absolutely. There's no doubt. I mean, it will be a situation where they look it up, they see, and they're like, wow, like these guys are, they're big.
They've talked to so-and-so, you know what I mean? And look, how funny is it that his first game calling was your former coach? That's awesome.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. And his wife really is like, that's how his wife really is. She really is like, really,
He's like, first game ever. I thought I was getting a goodie bag every game. What are we talking about here? Like,
yeah, exactly. That's so funny. Well, great podcast. We're back tonight at 8:30, right?
Yeah, 8:30. Our 8:30 time with Rob Assisi, who's obviously well, for our viewers will see it, but big into the whole Feed the Cats world. Kind of one of the main characters, I guess, in Tony Holler's I don't even know what you want, posse, I guess, maybe, right? Is that a good word? I don't know, his crew. I mean, look, I'm looking at the track consortium that I'm going to in December. Like, there's 13 speakers, and we've had 11 on the show.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah, we really hit it good. So, we'll go fix some fire alarms. I don't know if that's a good thing.
I went and pulled the one off. That's how I had to pull one of them off.
Never.
It never ends. Unbelievable.
Oh yeah. Well, apparently I have to mandatory through my HOA. I have to have my vents cleaned, like my air dryer vent has to be cleaned by a certified New Jersey, whatever, the HVAC guy. So I got to pay freaking however much to make sure there's not too much build up in my air vents. It's mandatory, I guess. Got a nice little note tacked to my front door yesterday. So,
then you have to go get it changed or whatever.
Of course. And hey, here's the company to use, and they'll give you a discounted rate. And it's like, buddy, I could do this myself, and you can come watch me. But sure, I'll pay whatever you're asking. Thank you.
That's so funny. That really. Yeah.
Welcome to New Jersey, buddy. We're in trouble, so God help us.
Oh. Not as much. Well, we are in trouble because of New York City, probably too. But
buddy, we're a little close for that. Like, I heard somebody said it's like, hey, New York's really about to turn into Gotham City. So,
oh gosh,
good thing we're across the river.
Thank goodness you
and we relocated a little bit further away, dude. So I think we're okay. We got a pretty good gap right there to Sandy Hook from New York, but God help us, buddy.
Yeah, that's funny. It's really, really funny that like that whole situation. I can't believe people voted that way.
That tells you how many people are just so either anti one person or just literally like grasping for whatever it is, like, you know, all of these like rainbows and unicorns and like all this stuff that these guys spew out in an election type period. Like, holy shit, man. Like, wow. Like, okay. Like, if you think that's what's actually going to happen, good luck. All right. Like I'm so jealous that I'm so jealous that you can live in that fantasy world and think it's reality. Like, good for you. Like, yeah, like, wow. Right. Like, I'm envious of it because that sure as hell isn't me, you know, because I just look at it like, oh shit, here we go. But
right. It's
crazy, buddy. Like it's crazy. I don't know. Like people that are just, I don't know. To me, it goes back to uneducated people, and to me there's no excuse to be uneducated when literally everything is you can go look up information and find out what it is, and if you don't see it, if you see it one way, go something else, and you can see all these things and educate yourself as to make what the right decision is, and people still just like winging it, buddy. So,
well, I think a lot of it also is young people are disenchanted in New York City.
Well, they're living in fantasy world, dude.
Like, what do you think New York City is going to be? It's the most expensive place to live. Like, I mean,
I'm sorry. Like, you want to choose to, and from someone who lived in the city, right? Like,
I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun too once it becomes affordable.
I think you're going to see the clientele of what a New Yorker is change real quick. Like, you know what I mean? What it is to be a New Yorker, you're going to see some things that used to be behind closed doors, and now all of a sudden, this is what's walking down friggin' Broadway. So, shit, man, might have to look back. I don't know if I'll be visiting or any plays or, you know, going to see the tree anymore. Like, I don't think so.
Right? Like, it's mind blowing. But I
woke up this morning like looking at it all. Like, oh God, Florida looks better every day.
Oh, Florida's gonna be that's gonna be the spot. It's gonna be a spot, no doubt about it. I mean, I don't see how it's not gonna be the spot, to be honest. But
the lesser of evils, I guess, is what we're kind of working with. And so, you know, I can convince my wife and, you know, to go live on a freaking ranch in Montana and only worry about us. And the biggest concern we have is like, you know, how do you get the hay to the horses? Like, I'd much rather live that life than where we are right now. God help us.
Unbelievable. It really is.
All right, buddy.
All right.
I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
All right, man.